Okay, welcome to the Amp Up Your Visual Studio Productivity webinar covering JustCode, JustTrace, JustMock, and JustDecompile. Today's session is being recorded and will be made available at tv.telerik.com. So this webinar is part of the Telerik Q1 2013 release series happening this week. Recordings from these webinars will be available as well. You still have time to register for tomorrow's webinars on Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8 controls. So be sure to check them out, and here's a good reason why you might want to. 10 attendees from each webinar will be selected to win a Telerik.net Ninja t-shirt and a $50 gift card to thinkgeek.com. We will announce the winners on Twitter and Facebook, and if you win, we will send you an email to the address that you used to register with. If you do win, please take a pic of your cool geeky item and share it with us on Twitter or Facebook. The agenda for the next hour is pretty straightforward. First, I'll start with introductions before giving an overview of the new features in each of the Just products. Most of this webinar will be spent on demos. I feel it's kind of better to show you the features in action. Finally, we have several members of the development teams available to answer your questions, so be sure to ask away. At the end of this webinar, I'm going to provide you a few resources and answer a few of the questions live. And afterwards, I'm going to compile the questions into a blog post, and hopefully we'll get that pretty soon. I think they're due tomorrow. Hi, my name is Chris Eargle, and I'll be your guru guide during today's session. I am a C# MVP, and I have my Microsoft Certified Professional Developer certification. I know how we all love certifications in both web and Windows applications. If you have any questions, please contact me at chris.eargle@telerik.com. If you want to tell me how awesome the new features are, please mention me on Twitter using @CodeFoodGuru. And if you want to learn more, please check out my personal blog at codefoodguru.com or my Telerik blog at blogs.telerik.com/ChrisErgle. Phil Japikse is speaking at Dev Days in the Netherlands, and he couldn't join us today. However, he was instrumental in constructing this webinar. Please give him a shout out on Twitter using @schematic and read his blogs for great information on agile software development. His personal blog is schematic.com, and his Telerik blog is at blogs.telerik.com/schematic. I'm going to take a look and see if there's any questions before I move into the presentation material. All right, great. It's just to make sure that nothing crazy is going on. So let's get started with JustCode. JustCode has a lot of new features, but a few of them directly benefit web and Win.js developers. Less is becoming quite popular as an alternative to CSS, and if you don't know Less, don't worry, I'll show it to you. And we've added support for it in JustCode. If you've used Less in the past, you probably remember that Visual Studio treated it like a text file. With JustCode, your Less files are colorized and have outlining, but we didn't just make it look pretty. We give it the full JustCode treatment with code analysis, styling, formatting, refactoring, and navigation. When you're ready to compile it to CSS, we provide options for both standard and minified CSS. Excuse me, guys. Let me take care of the rogue microphone. Okay, I think we took care of that. Some of you may already have Less support with Microsoft Web Essentials. Just by the way, that's a free product from Microsoft, and it's pretty fun and cool to use. And just to let you know, JustCode is completely compatible with it, so you can still use the Web Essentials to open Less files while receiving the benefits JustCode provides on top of it. Since we provide Less code templates, it only makes sense that we provide CSS code templates as well. And why stop there? Rather than copying and pasting HTML, we provide HTML templates as well. Don't confuse these last two features on the screen with code templates. Kendo and jQuery templates consist of HTML inside of a script tag of an HTML file. It works using the unsupported MIME types to prevent the browser from parsing it. Well, we also support these scripting templates, so you can use them in JustCode's HTML features and such. They're pretty cool, and I'll be demonstrating this as well. We renamed errors and warnings to code problems. you can configure these to let the analysis engine know whether an item should be reported as an error, a warning, or if it should be disabled. Of course, you still have the option to tell JustCode to ignore these on an individual basis. When I receive an update alert for JustCode, I get excited. There's always something cool in each build, right? And I can't wait to play with it. However, you may be happy with your version and simply want to get your work done. You can configure the automatic updates in the general options menu, and don't worry if you do turn those off, you can still update through the Tailor control panel or through JustCode's help menu. Another item under help is the Customer Experience Improvement Program. This is an optional program that helps us improve JustCode. We don't collect any personal information, only data to help us determine how JustCode is being used. If you're participating, you can have JustCode automatically submit issues it encounters, so that way you don't get those little error messages on your screen. There has been a preview panel for some code style options for some time, but finding it has been a little tricky since it's activated by clicking the label. We now notify you when previews are available so you can get through them quickly, or you know that they're there. We've added another preview as well. Hover over a constant with your mouse cursor and its value is shown as a tooltip. Finally, we've enhanced the layout of the visual aid and we've improved the performance of the test runner. So let's move into JustTrace. Like I said, I really want to get to the demos. Okay, so JustCode's been known for a long time as being unobtrusive. That's pretty much its shtick. This means that it doesn't get in the way of the experience you expect within Visual Studio. We've taken the same approach with JustTrace, integrating it with Visual Studio so it feels like it was there all along. And we've also improved the Visual Studio experience in other ways. For example, JustTrace is now an extension that runs out of process, so it doesn't impact Visual Studio's performance. We've also improved the customer feedback program, and if you wish to participate, you can enable anonymous feedback in the standalone JustTrace under Options. We provide more data than before as well. The improved data collection, this enables us to show you an instance level comparison of your memory snapshots. So if you're looking at some instances and you're looking at some objects and there's more instances available and you want to see the difference between these, you can get that information. And this allows you to get a deeper understanding of your application's behavior. And we also show field names and stack field names in the class diagrams, so you can get deeper detail on the held references preventing garbage collection. We've improved Windows Store app profiling, and we've also improved JustTrace's automatic updates. Let's take a look at JustMock. So we introduced automocking in the latest release, but we've improved it for profile mocking as well, or profile automocking as well. For some reason, I always think of transformers like Autobots or something. You do not need to create the interfaces to take advantage of this awesome feature. So profilers can interact in unexpected ways, and it's not fun when your favorite tools collide. To prevent this from happening, we've made JustMock work well with other profiling tools such as InDepend. The last product I'm going to talk about is JustDecompile. We've improved the plugin manager so you can install plugins without ever leaving JustDecompile. It's kind of similar to UGit or Visual Studio extensions. But the biggest news is that we've made vast improvements to the decompilation engine. And if you remember, the decompilation engine is actually used inside JustCode and JustTrace. So this helps these products out as well. Our testing shows that JustDecompile is currently the fastest, the most accurate .NET decompiler. And don't worry, we're sticking to our promise that it will always be free. I guess we can now say it's fast, free, forever. So now it's demo time. I'm going to start with JustDecompile. The second demo will start with a web project from scratch, and I'll use some new features from JustCode, JustMock, and JustTrace in the process. Let's open up JustDecompile. Okay. My audience view is showing, okay, there we go. The audience view on my screen was showing something that looked really odd, like a half window that was being folded. So this is the JustDecompile. If you haven't tried it, go download it. It's free and it's awesome. I have on the screen, I've opened up AutoMapper. I am going to right-click this. I'm going to choose Create Project. And I'm just going to save it here. Okay, so in my testing, this actually only took about 1 second, but since I have so many things running, it did go a little bit slower, but still, that is some amazing speed. And just so you know, JustDecompile, it's been a great free tool since its beta release, and this queue, we actually aimed at making it the only .NET decompiler you'll ever need. To achieve this, we need to make it both faster and more accurate than the others, and I'm happy to announce that we've achieved that goal. Making it more correct was just really a matter of handling more patterns produced by the compiler. And I know I make it sound easy, right? But you may be amazed at the IL constructs we found. Nevertheless, when we ran JustDecompile against the .NET Framework 4, it produced code with fewer errors than all the other .NET decompilers that can handle decompiling an entire assembly at one time. It's a little hard to test out the ones that don't do that, since you have to go through thousands of classes. So great, it's more correct, but we also had to make it faster, like you just saw. I mean, really, that's some blazing fast speed. And so it needs to be both more correct and faster than all the others, so we can hold up to our end of the deal. And as it turns out, we have another team. They make a great performance tool, and you may have heard of it, JustTrace, and I've talked about it a few minutes ago. And so using our own product is what produced these amazing results. And we're now 10 times faster than paid decompilers. So no worries though, JustDecompile is free. It's always going to be free, and there's no time bombs or other such silliness, so you don't have to worry about us cutting it off on you. So with give me 1 second, guys. Gotta mute another one. Okay, there we go. So decompiling is rarely perfect, right? You're basically getting a representation of the code, not the code itself. And you can try decompiling this assembly yourself, and you're going to see this blazing fast speed. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, instead of opening the project up, how many errors it has. It has 9 errors, and this is actually fewer than the other ones out there. So on average, when we tested it out, we have fewer errors than other decompilers, and it may be more convenient to simply edit the assembly, right? And particularly if you have an assembly that's got some odd stuff and you just need to make one little tweak to it. So in past webinars, I talked about the plugins. Very easy to get to. Go to Plugins, Plugin Manager. And excuse the screen size, I am recording this, and so I have to do 1280 by 720, and sometimes things don't fit all the way. So there are 2 plugins available here. I want to install the assembly error because I want to edit the assembly. If I wanted to deobfuscate an assembly, I could download d4.net deobfuscator. So I can click this. I can choose whether to install it for anyone or just me. Press next. Have to set the license, and then it is under the GPL. Downloading, and bam, we have it. So now I have Reflexel. I can then open it up, and I can go have some fun editing the assembly now. So that's pretty awesome. There's no more going out to any website or anything like that. Okay, let's close this. Let's move on to JustCode. So I'm a fan of web applications, and I'm a Microsoft C# MVP, right? Why do I bring this up? I'm used to having a great development environment at my fingertips, and I've never really understood the whole appeal of using glorified Notepad to write code. I think most of us could do it, but why would you want to? So Visual Studio provides a much better experience. I think that I want to check out some of these JustCode features, and to do that, I am going to create a new project, and I'm going to go to Web, and like I said, I'm a C# guy. There's so many cool web things out there nowadays, and I'm going to use the Kendo UI template because I know that it provides the HTML5 and all that other goodness that I want out of a brand new application. So I am going to, well, I was going to go to my GitHub directory. I'll just go ahead and create it there. Press OK. This all looks good. I want to use the latest MVC framework. I personally like Razor. I have some themes I can choose from very quickly. And this, I'm going to use Kendo UI for ASP.NET MVC. Let's press next. This is all good. I will go ahead and set up open access. I'm not going to use it in this demo, but it's great to have my data access layer already set up for me. So we don't just have like great HTML5 controls. If you get DevCraft, even the UI has tons of controls for, actually has all the controls for every single .NET type you can think of, just about. We have Windows 8 controls for both XAML and WinJS. We have ASP.NET Ajax. We have all kinds of things. Even WinForms. So you have an old WinForms application, you can make it look just like a brand new XAML app. Okay, so we've opened this up. I am going to use an empty fluent model because, like I said, I'm not really doing anything with it this time. Next, finish. I'll leave that alone. Cool. So we have a brand new Kendo application running. Let's just run it real fast. Actually, I'm going to turn that off. Just to make sure it looks okay. Okay, great. So there's nothing special about this because I haven't used any of the Kendo controls. I'm still using the default theme that it came with. I'll shut this down for now. Now, whenever you set up a new application like this, you probably want to go edit the styles and make it look the way you want it to look. So if I go to content, we find our site.css, and we actually have the Kendo stuff imported as well. And you can go edit it, and we have some cool features for finding where these particular selectors apply. Or if I was in HTML, I can see which CSS elements are applying, or some CSS selectors are applying to that particular HTML element. But notice this thing up here about the base color for this template is pound, a bunch of gobbledygook. If you'd like to use a different color, start by replacing all the instances. Great, that's fun. That kind of violates the whole don't repeat yourself mantra, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close that. I'm going to rename this to .less. Okay. Now, one thing I should mention is that JustCode does not analyze anything with the build action none. And this is really great whenever you have like a minimized JavaScript file and you don't want it to show errors for things that are only coming up because they're minified. So if you want JustCode to analyze it, you should change the content, or change the build action back to content. This only happens because I renamed it. It's an action from Visual Studio to switch to build action. So I'm going to put this back to content because I actually do want to analyze the site.less. And I should give it a second. Okay, JustCode kicked in. Great. Okay, so we have background color. Everything looks just like the CSS file that we had before. In fact, I can right-click this and choose JustDecompile, or JustCompile. JustDecompile, I'm too used to that term. JustCompile to CSS, or just compile to CSS and minify. So I'm going to create a CSS file from this. Got the CSS file open. It looks just like it did before, just with all the padding gone. So less is basically CSS. If you want to know more about less, go to lesscss.org. But how can we take advantage of it? If you've opened up this brand new project, you know you've got less support now. What can you do? Well, this whole template thing, or this whole base color thing, I don't like having to change it in multiple places. I really do believe in don't repeat yourself. So I'm going to take this value. One thing that we provide with JustCode, and can just type in V, and this is a code template. I span it out. I'm going to name this BG color. The value I'm going to replace. Cool. Oh, notice this too. You actually have the color selector, so you can go select your colors. That comes from JustCode. Ooh, I should not have deleted that. Okay, now that I have a variable called BG color, I guess I'm going to do the find and replace thing. Except it's going to hit my first one. That kind of sucks. Okay, so now every single element that was using that particular color is now using my variable called BG color. So if I go back here and I compile it again, it's got the color in the CSS. So that's one quick thing you can do. You can combine all those colors and actually define them as variables, so you don't have to repeat yourself. So if you change your themes out, you only change it in one place. But there's more you can do with this as well. Let's say I want to have background color to be this and color to be this for certain elements. I could say, well, normally I guess we'd make a class for that, right? So make a class and apply it. I'm just going to call this my class. Kind of goofy. So I've made this little class thing. Going to say background color at BG color. Cool, I got that. And I want to say color okay, great. So I have this class that represents my color, my background color, and my color. It's probably called my colors. Now I can go here and I can type in dot my class. Now I can remove this. This is called a mix-in. So I don't have to go apply these particular classes to my elements in the HTML. Instead, I can just create a mix-in and tell the CSS use this particular set of properties inside your body. Let's make sure this actually works. And look, JustCode figured out that this particular color has a name called dim gray. So that's another benefit you get. You can get it will generate the names for you or use the names for you, even if you use the colors. So that's just some cool stuff that you get out of the box and very easily. I can also bring up the usages for this particular class so that our navigations work as well. But I think I want to go actually create something with this particular project instead of just playing around with CSS. So I'm going to go to my views. I'm going to go to my index view. And so I don't have to type all this out because it's huge. I'm going to copy a piece of code I've already written. And I'm going to paste it in. And this is a lot of stuff. So let me describe to you what's going on very quickly. I have a label for, actually, let's call this username. So I have a label for the username. I have a text box that, for the username, takes in the value code food guru at first. And I have a button to get the tweets. And then I have this thing I call a tweet list. And it's just this empty div, and it's just sitting there, looking all lonesome. But I have created this little template, this Kendo template, that describes each of the items that's going inside that particular div. So JustCode gives me my typical HTML support. I can find matching CSS rule sets. I have my refactorings that work inside of it as well. So JustCode recognizes this as HTML. I also have these little names, and this is actually being used by Kendo to populate different portions of the template. Down here, I have my Kendo template. Now, I'm using Kendo itself instead of the Kendo MVC for this, but Kendo MVC will make it, allows it to work as you would expect. MVC, I hate to call them controls, they're not really controls. The MVC control-like things. So if you're used to doing things in the MVC, you can do it that way. If you prefer to do things the HTML5 way, you can do it that way as well. I've created a data source, and I'm going to be hitting a URL in this particular application called API tweets. I need to go add that, and it's adding the username to the end because I kind of like those little RESTful URLs. And right here, I am actually stating that this tweet list is actually a Kendo list view, and you should use this particular data source. Additionally, I'm telling it for the items inside of it, use this particular template, which is just named template. I know it's a grandiose name. Finally, whenever someone clicks the Get Tweets button, it runs this particular function that's changing the read URL because the username is probably changed. And then it's reading that data into the data source. And below here, I just have styling for it. Okay, let's go add the particular piece to make this work. First, I need to add a reference to my Twitter DLL. And that's just my little library behind the scenes to get information. And then I'm going to go to my controller, and I'm going to choose Add Controller. And I want to use a let's make an empty API controller, and I'm going to call it Tweets. Now let's make sure I actually call that the right thing. Yeah, it is called Tweets. Great. So I've added this API controller. The default route for this is /API/ whatever the controller name is, minus the controller part. I need to add a using clause to Twitter, my Twitter library. And I need to make a get method. So I want to say public IEnumerable tweet. So a sequence of tweets, call it get. And we need to make an ID, so I need to pass the ID in. So I put that in there. And then I say return tweets dot by ID. So my little Twitter library is going to get the tweets by whatever this username is. And it gets it as IEnumerable, returns it to the other view. So let's run this and make sure it works. Yay. Cool. So let's get in these tweets. Okay, so you guys can see it now. I'm going to close this. So before I move on to the next portion, let me show you some other things that we've added for JustCode. I'm going to go to Options. I should probably kill this application. I'll do it in a second. So I'm in Options. Under General, we actually have the updates, so you can check it to automatically check for updates. If you don't want to check for updates, you can turn that off. And you can choose whether or not to include the internal builds in there as well. Under Code Analysis, you'll see that there's support for less in here. Under Code Style, oh, well, let's take a look at those actually. Notice how this is renamed to Problems. That's because it may not actually be a problem for you. So maybe I don't care that the error types don't match the file names. They shouldn't unless I'm making them partial classes. And in some cases, that isn't really an option. So I don't want that to be a warning or an error. That is perfectly fine. Field that's never assigned, that's kind of bad. It doesn't really stop my development. So I made it a warning. I may be in the midst of utilizing that field and just haven't got to it yet. But identical if and else clauses, that's lame. So add that as an error. All right, let's take a look at this. So we have a few options here right now. Invalid property values, language errors, these are definitely errors. Some warnings and unknown properties. All right, under the code style, just let you know, because this is like one of those cool features that is sometimes overlooked. Notice down here it says selecting an option will show code preview here. What that means is click on the label. So I selected this particular option, and it is showing me what it will happen if I use it. So actually, excuse me, showing me what will happen if I don't use it in this case, because I don't actually have it checked. So show me how it's affecting my code. If I check this, it changes. And the preview shows me how my code will be affected by it. And we get the little asterisk letting us know that something's been changed. So you know whether you actually want to save it or not. I mean, if you go clicking through here a lot, it can be a little confusing about what you changed and what you didn't change. And we want to ensure that you don't modify something you didn't intend. Okay, so that's with the code style. Under code templates, you know how I used the less code template just a few seconds ago with the variable thing? Here's the code templates that work with inside less. Of course, we had those for CSS as well. There are going to be fewer of them because less is more robust than CSS. And we have HTML templates, and that's great if you have those repeated elements that you want to store somewhere instead of copying and pasting. Okay, I guess I can mention this real fast. The customer experience program, if you want to turn on any options here, just go to this under help, JustCode help, customer experience improvement program, and you can choose to participate or not. We don't collect any of your personal information. We do, however, collect information about the hardware and software configuration. This is important in case something is causing a conflict with JustCode. And we also collect information about how you use JustCode so we can make it better for you in the future. This lets us know how you're using it. But if I'm joined up with this, I can also choose to report my exceptions automatically. So if something is conflicting, I don't even have to mess with it. JustCode will alert the JustCode dev team that it's happening, and they can take care of it. And I can tell them, state whether or not I actually want to associate that exception report with my account. So if I want to be anonymous, I don't have to check this. Okay, now I have this running, and I have this little tweaks controller. I may want to know at this point whether this is a good library to use. Maybe I pulled in a very terrible library that's doing bad things in my code. So let me talk a little bit about the way we've worked JustTrace into this. Now, the thing is that we've made it unobtrusive. So you haven't really seen a whole lot of things popping up saying JustTrace this, JustTrace that. But you do see there's a JustTrace menu. We do want you to get access to the options you have available. Now, there's no more window that pops up. Instead, it's actually worked into the menu bar. If you see right here, I have an option for Performance Profiler, and I have an option for Memory Profiler. So if I want to turn on Memory Profiler for this, I can click this. Okay, it's selected now. And I have a few options available. I can tell it to restart IIS before it launches my application. I can profile the Silverlight applications here instead of inside the website. I can also create a call tree. So it's kind of like getting your performance data along with the memory allocation data. This is kind of intensive, so I'm not sure if I would suggest using it immediately unless it's something you need to use. But the performance profiler gives us a few other options. I can disable it on startup, and the reason that you may want to do this is that there's only a particular small set of functionality you want to test. So you don't want to collect performance data until you get to it. So you would check this to disable the profiler until you get to that point. Then you can enable it by unchecking it. Also, we can profile all the processes that are created by the application. And I recommend keeping the tracing profiler on. It does impact performance a little more than if you turned it off, but it's more accurate. So if you don't need that accuracy, yeah, go ahead and turn it off, and it won't have that much of an impact on your application. But in general, I say keep it on. Also, you probably don't want to profile a .NET framework. There's really no need to unless you're Microsoft or you're trying to be Microsoft. If you want to modify, if you want internal data on the .NET framework, then uncheck this so it doesn't filter it. I'm going to use a memory profiler. And I'm going to run the application. And it's loading up. By the way, one weird issue I came across, just to mention real fast, while I was testing this stuff out, was a problem where nothing was working. It wouldn't even run the application. Turned out that Visual Studio had created a random port. You know, it makes a random port when you create a new application, and it made it number 6669, which just so happened, I had to do a little bit of research. Just so happens that Chrome blocks because it's that's a port that's commonly used by viruses. So if you ever have a weird issue like that where your site won't run, and it's giving you some error about a bad port, take a look at that. Okay, so I have hit the page. It's loaded up some tweets from my username. At this point, I want to get a snapshot. So I'm going to go to JustTrace, and I'm going to show my profiler window. I'm going to grab a snapshot. Cool. And I'm going to go back. Let's grab another one, schematic. Let's see if this is handling memory well. Okay, so I've pulled schematic back. Okay, it's updated on the screen now. I am going to go ahead and kill this and get the snapshot. All right, I want to do a comparison between these. So I open up the timeline. I have a great article and video on this if you want to see how to use the timeline. I've opened up the timeline. I am going to compare my latest snapshot with the previous one. Click compare. And I have a type list difference. So I can see the differences between the two snapshots. I'm going to sort by instances and see what got added. And here's something I noticed right away, because this is definitely not from .NET Framework or anything I really have no control over. This is from that library I was using, twitter.tweet. Now, it only had 4 tweets on the screen. And the second snapshot has 4 more in memory. That means it kept around those other 4 instances. So I can double click this, and I get the instances. So I can see all the different instances. I can see that these 4 were surviving the last garbage collection, and these other 4 are new. This is kind of what I expect based upon what I saw. That's bad. These are being held on. So how can I tell that they're being held? I'm going to right-click this and choose Show Paths to GC Roots. And this brings up a diagram. And because of my screen resolution, it is very small. So let me zoom in a little bit. I can see that tweets is being held by this tweet array, which is part of a dictionary. And the dictionary is on this.entries. If I go up here, I see that there is a static field called tweets in twitter.tweets. So this tweet stack field is just holding on to things inside of a dictionary. I guess it's caching or something. But this could be bad. This little application, it's not that big of a deal. If it grew too large, or even if I sat around for a long enough time, IIS would reset it. But if you have an application with a large call graph, or large object graph, and it's holding on to things, that can be very bad. It can impact your performance, or impact your memory usage, which will eventually impact your performance. So I might not want to use this library, or if I have access to the source code, I may want to change it. I could probably use JustDecompile to get in there and change it. So let me kill this. Just a few other notes about JustDecompile. JustTrace. I'm talking about JustDecompile. JustTrace. All those options are available across the menu, but you can get to them as well inside the JustTrace menu by going to Profiler Settings. I can disable it if I wish, but really I can just click on Memory Profiler and turn it off. And I can show the profiler window, which is what I've been doing. And we also have the documentation and send feedback. But I want to show you the start page. If you have any questions about anything with JustTrace, you want to learn how to get started with it, go to the start page and check out these videos. We actually have tutorials on the performance profiler, the memory profiler, and the Visual Studio extension that you can get to like that. If you have snapshots, like I have my snapshot I just took, you can get to it by going to Open Snapshots. It has a list of all your most recent snapshots. Actually, I think it retains most of them. If I have some saved off somewhere from a different computer, I can import them in. I can show the folder that actually has the files for them. This is a JTM file. And I can clear the history out if I wish as well. So if you want to send us some feedback, click the Send Feedback button. You can let us know if you're having any issues, and you can send us the log file as well. And to help and support, we have a few other videos that you can take a look at. Well, actually, I have one other. These are the other videos that were on the Getting Started page. We have a link to the blog. We have links for you to get to the dedicated support, and you can check for updates from here. Okay, this is cool. Let's move on to the next little section. I'm not finished. I'm almost finished, not quite. So I guess what I really need, if I have any type of application that's doing anything, is I need to be able to say log in. That's kind of important, right? Logging into the application. So I'm going to create a new controller. Add controller. Login. And this isn't an empty API controller or anything like that. I really want to have an MVC controller. I'm going to make an empty MVC controller. So I'm creating a layered application. I most likely want to have a few service classes handling user validation and logging. So let's add that in here. Private, read-only, user validation service. And personally, I like things that read well, so I'm going to call it validate. And I'm going to create another one for the logging. Private, read-only, logging, service, log. Okay, great. I have these two fields. I need to create a class from them. I'm going to use JustCode, create class. Cool, I have a class here. Create a class here. Great. So I've created my little stub classes. I probably want someone to be able to test this by passing in their own user validation service or logging service. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to choose create constructor. And JustCode made a constructor for me. The validate and the log is being passed into it. And I probably need a model to use for my login. So let's see here. Let's make a login model. And I have my login model. I am going to give it a username and password. Now, I should let you know that I'm not bothering with this at the moment, but you really should put the appropriate validations, set the display type, the data types, and such, and do anything else you need to do to protect the security of your site. So I may put a display type, or a data type of datatype.password, and make them both required and that sort of thing. But this is just to demo something else, so I'm not going to worry about it at the moment. Okay, someone goes to the URL, they get the index for this particular controller. I need to enable a post, so let's make another index. So action result index login model. Let's restrict this to HTTP post. Otherwise, MVC will get mad at us. Add a quick using JustCode. It's a quick fix. And I need to do something here. So I need to utilize my validation in my logging service and such. So I'm going to say, let's make it a nullable int, because I'm going to get a user ID back. And if it doesn't log in, I really don't want a user ID, so I'm going to say it should be null. So let's say int question mark user ID equals validate. And let's give it a good name. Username, password, match. So we'll make sure they match. So we're going to validate that the username and password matches. So model.username and model.password. Now, if it's good, so if user ID has value, then I want to return, I guess I want to redirect. So we've logged in. I'm going to redirect to a route. Let's give it a default route. Send back to the home page. If I were fleshing this out, I may actually have it return back to the URL from which they came. Let's see. I guess if it didn't validate, then I need to do some more work here. I want to log the fact that they tried to log in. So I'm going to say log invalid login attempt. Model.username. And I'm going to add a model state error because, well, the model's bad. And I have no idea if it's the username here or if it is the password. So I'm just going to add it to the model without an actual field name. And say invalid username or password. Finally, I'm going to return the view. They should just get the view back with this model, so they get their information back. Okay, I guess I need to actually create methods. Let's use JustCode again. Create a method. Cool. I'm going to leave it with the exception because that's not the purpose here. And in the log, I'm going to, again, create a method. Cool. So I expect the username and password to match. If it does match, I'm going to redirect. If it doesn't match, I'm going to log in an invalid login attempt, and then I'm going to send them back to the same page so they can fix their problem. All right. Now, I need a test for this. So I'm going to go to my MVC application test. Turns out the template created with MS Test, and I'm going to go ahead and use that. That's no problem. I know I'm going to use JustMock, so I'm going to add the references to JustMock, JustMock.dll, JustMock.container. Because you see, I have these two different things I'm probably going to have to mock. Now, it seems like a lot of work to go mock something, particularly in one use case where I don't even use the log. So we have this great little feature called automocking. So what I need to do now is I'm going to give it an appropriate name. Let me just type in login tests. And the first thing I'm going to test is that it should log in with valid user credentials. So let's rename this. Should log in with valid user credentials. Okay. Let's make a user. His name was Bob. Okay. Username Bob. Bob just so happens to create very poor passwords. And then he can't remember that he created this poor password, so he takes a sticky note and he writes it down, puts it underneath his keyboard where no one will find it. His user ID is 5. So I'm going to test this login controller. What I want to do is I want to create a mocking container to tell JustMock that we're going to test this particular class, mock the pieces that are needed. So var container equals new mocking container login controller. Okay, so I need a few usings here. Let's see. Add using for JustMock.container. Add using for controllers. Cool. And we need to, well, I've been arranging already, but I need to actually arrange what we expect to happen. So say container.arrange. And whenever this user validation service is called, I haven't created any mocks for it or anything like that. JustMock is handling it for me. So this user validation service, whenever someone calls something on this, and I guess what we need them to call is username, password match. Username, password. So when it matches this, when this should be called, and it should return user ID that we selected. Let me put this on the next line. And it should occur one time. I'm not actually going to test this particular thing that's only called once, but I'm going to put it in here. I may actually want to make sure it's only called one time because it's kind of a terrible bug to be logged in twice, right? I've arranged a test. I need to act upon the system error test. In this case, it's the mocking container. So I'm going to get a result. And to access the actual instance from the container, it has this very unique name that no one will guess called instance, right? And I'm going to call the index action, the one that takes in the login model. So even though this username password match should expect these two different values, I need to pass in a login model. So what has to happen when it runs the test is it has to do its thing and split out the login model's values into its call to the user validation service. So say username equals username, password equals password. And now that I've done my action, I need to assert something that I expect. And I expect that if this particular scenario is called where it's a valid login, it should redirect them to the default route. The only test I'm going to write right here for demonstration purposes is that the result is of type redirect to route result. Now you can put the appropriate assertions for your use case here. This is just to make sure that we got this particular redirect. Let's run this and make sure it works. Running, it's running, and it failed. Gotta enable the profiler. So Telerik, JustMock, enable profiler. Whoops. But this is important because I stated what's new is that we are actually using the that we have automocking working for the profile version. So now you know that this definitely works with the profiled version of JustMock. You can use the non-profiled edition, the free edition, JustMock Lite, but you will need to use interfaces and such. So if you set up a test like this where you haven't separated things out in the interfaces, you get automocking with that as well. So the previous queue we added automocking for interfaces. In this queue we added it for profile types. So it depends on what type of project you're working on and the level of separation that you're performing. And this now works. So great, our test passed. Okay, I want to test the other scenario. So I want to copy this. I know, copy and pasting. I'm terrible. Terrible person. I'm going to rename this to, well, it shouldn't have the same name because it won't compile. I'll rename it to should log invalid login attempts because that's what I want to check. I want to make sure that's actually doing the log. Now, the invalid return, the return for an invalid user is null. So I'm going to have to get rid of this implicit type and use an explicit type called, my int question mark. And I'm going to set this null. So now when this tries to log in, it's going to return user ID null, which means it failed. And this should occur one time, but it should not get the redirect route result. So I need to make sure this actually fails. That whole red-green refactor thing, I'm going to make sure that this is indeed a failing test. So should log invalid login attempts is my top test. It's initializing, it ran, it failed. Okay, I expected it to fail. It was supposed to return the view back, and that's what we see on the screen. So I can change this to view result. And this isn't what I'm trying to actually test here, but I'm going to run it anyway just to make sure that this is correct now. It's coming, bam, failed. Oh, why did it fail? That is interesting. Okay, it passed. Guess it had did a shadow copy of the DLL, and I hit the buttons too fast. Okay, so let's test the logging service. So I want to do another arrangement. I'll say container.arrange. X goes into x.invalid login attempt. Ooh, I just need to put the generic type. So we're going to use logging service, invalid login attempt, the username, and this needs to occur one time. So the only thing I really want to test here is that it actually called the invalid login attempt, because if it didn't, that's a problem. That means someone removed my piece of code and this code is actually essential for a business requirement that we've logged invalid login attempts. So I need to make sure this occurred, and I'm going to do that by calling container.assert. And I'm going to assert that all my arrangements under the logging service were called. Let's compile it. Let's run it. So that's why mocking is important. Well, for a variety of reasons it's important, but one of the primary reasons it's important is if you need to ensure that a particular action took place with a dependency. And like I said, if someone removed it, it would be bad. It would cause a bug, and then we wouldn't get information when people are trying to log in with bad credentials. So our test works, and we're good. Now, I am finished with the demo portion. We have 5 minutes left, so hopefully I can get some of your questions. Let's go to the slide. Here's a couple of resources for you. If you want to read about JustCode, if you want to read about all the JustProcs, go to blogs.telerik.com/justteam. Here are the links for JustCode, JustTrace, JustMock, and JustDecompile. If you want to send us some feedback, you can always go to telerik.com/whatever the JustCode or JustMock, JustTrace, and JustDecompile/feedback, and it'll take you to our feedback portal where you can post some feature requests or bug reports or whatever you wish. But that feedback portal is basically your direct link to the team. Also, don't forget, if you're interested in all of our productivity tools, and our DevCraft Complete has so many, so, go to telerik.com/developer-productivity-tools. Then you can check out all the great controls and products that we have at Telerik for programmers. Also, some email. My email address is chris.eargle@telerik.com. Phil's, who I'm sorry he was absent today, but he is speaking in the Netherlands, is phil@telerik.com. And you can reach us both on Twitter, and our Twitter addresses are on the screen. So I'm going to answer a few questions I see here. And if you have any more questions, be sure to answer them. We do have developers from the product teams online answering these questions right now. And actually, I have to expand my window out so I can see the actual questions. It's your question about DevCraft. Can you install it in 2 environments? I have a separate environment for SharePoint than my MVC. So the way the licenses typically works, and I would definitely read the license just to be sure, but it should be a developer seat. So this means that as long as it's only you using those 2 machines and no one else is using that install, you're fine. If someone else is using it, they need to have a license as well. So I have, but even before I joined Telerik, I had my products on my laptop and my desktop at the same time, and that's fine because I was the only one using them. So it is typically by developer seat. Now, like I said, if you should probably check that because that's the normal license, and I could be mistaken. There might be some other licenses out there. JustTrace works with almost all project types. I don't believe it works with Win.js projects at this point in time, but most of the .NET project types are Windows services, WinForms, anything that is standard .NET that's using the .NET framework, it should work with. If there are any requests you have for a particular project type that you feel like could be enhanced, send us an email or go to that feedback portal. Can you add these features in Visual Studio 2010 as well? JustCode has, our plugin works inside Visual Studio 2010, so you get those features, all the features that come with JustCode. Does less work for C# code? Wouldn't it be really cool if C# had mix-ins? I mean, after I got used to them, I was like, wow, that'd be a cool feature for C#, but I doubt we're going to get it. So less is CSS. Less is basically additions on top of it to make it, to give you more power and to extract out repeated elements, and so they're no longer repeated. So it is specific to CSS. There are some other similar projects out there like SASS, SAS. SAS is probably more powerful, but it's less seems to be the de facto that's coming on. I have a feeling it's because it's just so simple and intuitive. Couldn't you use T4 instead of less? Well, I guess you could, but less is just so elegant. T4 is great for many situations, but I probably wouldn't. Someone's asking about our plans for SAS. I don't have any updates on those plans at this point in time. If that's something you want to see, please go visit the feedback portal. Remember, it's teller.com/justcode/feedback. And someone told me they weren't aware of these features until today. So awesome. I'm glad you got something out of it. I definitely like providing information to the audience. Okay, I'm looking for a couple other questions. It's actually time for us to wrap up. So since it's time for us to wrap up, 12:01 p.m., what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your questions, any that weren't answered, all the answered ones, and I'm going to compile them into a document. So I'm not going to quote you verbatim. I'm going to reword everything to make sure that it fits the document. And some questions I'm going to have to combine, some I may have to separate out. But there will be a blog post going up within hopefully tomorrow, but at the latest Monday, that should answer all your questions. In addition, the JustCode team may, or one of the Just teams may get back to you directly if it's something that we feel like we need to talk to you about. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending today. We definitely appreciate it, and we love showing you off all these new products. And please send us feedback, letting us know what you would like to see in future editions. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.